Friends, after a woman's husband passed away leaving her a widow, you'll be shocked to find out what her son did next. It's a story of struggle, compassion, and an unexpected turn of events. You won't believe what happened. Watch till the end to find out the full story. And if you enjoy the video, please give it a like. Also, if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon. Let's get started. Once upon a time, there was a 12-year-old boy named Rohan who lived with his mother and older sister in a modest 3-story house in Lucknow, India. The house was built by his father, who had worked in a private company. His father passed away unexpectedly 5 years ago, at the age of 35. He was the breadwinner of the family, and his sudden death created a vacuum that would never be filled. Rohan's mother was only 27 years old when her husband died. At such a young age, she found herself alone, struggling to provide for her children. The pain of losing her husband was overwhelming, but the financial burden was even more crushing. The company where Rohan's father worked provided them with only 2 lakh rupees, which was far from enough to sustain them for long. Unfortunately, none of their relatives or friends came forward to offer any support. They say that in times of hardship, even relatives become strangers. And that's exactly what happened to Rohan's family. Once surrounded by people, they now found themselves completely isolated. Everyone went on with their own lives and no one cared to check on them. Rohan's mother, who had always been a loving and caring wife, now found herself in an unfamiliar role. With no one else to turn to, she became the sole caretaker of her family. She spent her days grieving and her nights worrying about how to feed her children. She spent all her time at home trying to make ends meet. Despite her best efforts, the money her husband had left behind was quickly running out. As time passed, the financial strain became unbearable. They were unable to pay their bills, and food was becoming scarce. Rohan's mother did everything she could to save money. She cut down on expenses, sold whatever little they had, and tried to make the best of their dire situation. But even with all her sacrifices, the money was gone within 10 months. With no other options left, Rohan's mother made a difficult decision. She would have to leave the house and find work to support her children. As Rohan's mother ventured out into the world to find work, she faced the harsh reality of a woman alone, struggling to support 2 children. She first found a job as a domestic helper in one house. The pay was minimal, but it was a start. She continued her search and soon managed to secure 2 more cleaning jobs. With 3 jobs, she earned a total of 12,000 rupees a month. Though it was barely enough to cover their daily expenses, Rohan's mother persevered. However, even with this small income, life was still difficult. Bills had to be paid, the rent had to be covered, and the children's needs had to be met. The pressure was immense. Half of her income was spent on sending Rohan and his sister to school and buying them small necessities, leaving her with very little to get by. Rohan, on the other hand, was doing his best to stay focused on his education despite the constant worry over food and money at home. He tried not to let it affect his studies, but soon the weight of hunger and stress took a toll on him. For 2 days, Rohan hadn't eaten anything. His body grew weak and he couldn't focus. His stomach ached and he felt dizzy. He drank only water to keep himself going, hoping it would provide some relief. Yet, as he sat in class, he felt his energy draining away. His vision blurred and everything around him seemed to be fading into darkness. Rohan's teacher, Mr. Mehta, noticed the change in him. He saw the pale, weak boy struggling to stay awake and wondered what was wrong. Concerned, Mr. Mehta approached him and gently asked, "What's wrong with you, Rohan? Are you feeling all right?" With great difficulty, Rohan opened his eyes and replied, "Yes, sir, I'm fine." But Mr. Mehta wasn't convinced. He could see that Rohan was far from fine, so he insisted, "Tell me what's really going on. You don't look okay." Rohan hesitated, but after a few moments he admitted, "We have no food at home. We haven't eaten for 2 days. I'm not feeling well." Mr. Mehta's heart sank upon hearing this. He could see how much Rohan was suffering. Without a second thought, he stood up, guided Rohan to the staff room, and immediately asked the school's watchman to go to the market. Mr. Mehta handed him some money and told him, "Quickly, bring something for Rohan to eat." The watchman rushed to the market, and within minutes he returned with a plate of samosas and a bottle of chilled water. Mr. Mehta handed the food to Rohan and said, "Here, eat this. You need to recover your strength." Rohan hesitated at first, but the moment he took a bite of the samosa and drank the cold water, he began to feel better. His head cleared, and he felt the energy slowly returning to his body. His vision, once clouded, now seemed clear, and for the first time in days, Rohan felt something resembling normalcy. Mr. Mehta, still worried but relieved to see Rohan improving, asked, "How do you feel now?" Rohan nodded weakly, his face finally showing a sign of relief. "I'm better, sir. Thank you." Mr. Mehta smiled warmly. "Good. Now go back to class, and after school I want you to come see me in my office." As the school bell rang at the end of the day, Rohan walked toward Mr. Mehta's office. He still felt a bit weak, but was now able to think more clearly. When he arrived, Mr. Mehta was waiting for him. "Don't worry, Rohan, I'm going to help you," Mr. Mehta said as he stood up. He put his hand on Rohan's shoulder and said, "Come on, I'll take you to the market." Mr. Mehta took his scooter, and Rohan sat behind him. Together they went to the local market in Lucknow. Mr. Mehta bought everything Rohan's family needed: flour, rice, dal, sugar, cooking oil, and other essentials. But he didn't stop there. Mr. Mehta carried all the groceries directly to Rohan's house. When they arrived, Rohan's mother wasn't home yet. She often worked late into the night cleaning houses, only returning home in the early hours of the morning. Mr. Mehta placed all the groceries in the kitchen and then turned to Rohan. "Don't worry about anything now," Mr. Mehta said. "From now on, I will make sure your family has everything they need. I'll bring food every month so you can focus on your studies without having to worry about where your next meal is coming from." Rohan felt a deep sense of relief wash over him. He had never imagined that someone outside his family would care so much. Mr. Mehta's kindness was like a ray of light in the darkest time of his life. Before leaving, Mr. Mehta turned to Rohan and said, "I know things are tough right now, but focus on your education. It's the key to a better future. I'll make sure the rest is taken care of." Mr. Mehta's help wasn't just a one-time gesture. Every month, without fail, Mr. Mehta sent groceries to Rohan's home. Rohan's mother couldn't believe the kindness of a man who wasn't even a close relative. Despite his modest salary, Mr. Mehta continued to help without ever asking for anything in return. He often visited Rohan's house to check if they had enough food to last through the month. But his support didn't stop there. One day, when Rohan's mother came home, she was surprised to see the kitchen fully stocked with all the essentials. In disbelief, she asked, "How did all this get here?" Rohan, sitting nearby, explained, "It was Sir Mehta. He's been sending these groceries every month. He even spoke to the school administration and got my 3 months' unpaid fees waived." Upon hearing this, Rohan's mother broke down in tears. She couldn't believe that someone with no obligation to them would go so far to help. Mr. Mehta's selflessness overwhelmed her, and she prayed for his well-being, grateful for the immense support he provided during their hardest times. Mr. Mehta's actions went far beyond what most people would do. He took a real interest in Rohan's future. He knew the only way for Rohan's family to escape poverty was through education. Mr. Mehta encouraged Rohan to focus solely on his studies and promised that he would always be there for him. Despite all the hardship, Rohan's mother was incredibly grateful, but she couldn't help but feel guilty that she couldn't repay Mr. Mehta for his kindness. However, Mr. Mehta, ever humble, assured her, "You don't need to thank me. Consider me your brother. Helping you is the least I can do. You and Rohan are like family to me." While Rohan's mother worked tirelessly to make ends meet, Mr. Mehta's regular support ensured that they never had to worry about food again. Over time, Rohan's mother felt a sense of peace, knowing that someone cared for them and that her children would not go hungry. As the months passed, Rohan focused on his studies with renewed determination. Inspired by Mr. Mehta's selfless help, Rohan began to dream of a better life, a life where he could someday repay his teacher for everything he had done. Despite all the struggles, Rohan's schoolwork improved. He worked diligently and began to excel in his classes. His teachers noticed the change in him. The weak, distracted boy who once struggled to stay awake was now attentive, focused, and full of hope. But Mr. Mehta's influence went beyond providing food or paying fees. He had planted in Rohan the belief that no matter how difficult life became, education would always be the key to overcoming obstacles. Rohan believed that if he worked hard enough, he could change his life, and one day help others the same way Mr. Mehta had helped him. Mr. Mehta's impact on Rohan was immeasurable. He was not only a teacher but also a mentor, a guiding light in the darkest period of Rohan's life. The lessons he taught went far beyond the classroom. They became the foundation for Rohan's life journey. Now filled with the courage to dream of a better future, Rohan focused entirely on his education. He knew that one day the best way to thank Mr. Mehta would be by becoming successful and helping others the same way he was helped. With Mr. Mehta's unwavering support, Rohan's life slowly began to change in ways he had never imagined. With Mr. Mehta's unwavering support, Rohan was able to focus entirely on his studies. He poured his heart and soul into learning, never forgetting the sacrifices his mother had made and the kindness Mr. Mehta had shown him. He worked harder than ever before, knowing that this was his chance to build a better future for himself and his family. One day, Rohan received the news he had been dreaming of. He had been awarded a scholarship to study at a prestigious university in the United Kingdom. The joy that filled his heart was indescribable. It was as if all the hardships he and his family had endured were finally coming to an end. Rohan's mother and sister were overjoyed by the news. For the first time in years, they had something to celebrate. Rohan never imagined that he would one day have the chance to study abroad. It seemed like a far-off dream, something only the rich and privileged could achieve. But now that dream was within his reach. The university had sent him a ticket, and he was about to embark on a new chapter of his life. The day Rohan left for his studies abroad, his mother and sister stood by his side, both with tears in their eyes. Rohan hugged them tightly and promised, "I will work hard to make you proud." As he boarded the plane, he couldn't help but reflect on how far he had come, from a boy struggling to survive to a young man with a bright future ahead of him. After a long flight, Rohan finally landed in the UK. The university had arranged everything. His accommodation, food, and all his expenses were taken care of. Rohan was overwhelmed with gratitude. He knew he was standing at the threshold of a new life, and it was all thanks to the support of people like Mr. Mehta. Even after settling into his new life, Rohan never forgot about his family back home. The scholarship not only covered his expenses but also provided him with some extra money, which he sent back to his mother every month. He knew she was still working hard as a domestic helper to support herself and his sister, and he wanted to ensure they were comfortable. Rohan even encouraged his mother to stop working, telling her that he could now support her. He wanted her to finally rest and enjoy the fruits of her labor. Rohan's life was finally beginning to turn around, and he felt a deep sense of pride and responsibility to take care of the family that had sacrificed so much for him. Over time, Rohan's financial situation improved further. He secured a part-time job while studying, and the money he earned allowed him to send even more money to his mother. His hard work paid off, and as he became more settled in his new life, his mother, who had once struggled to feed her children, could now live a much more comfortable life. She used the money Rohan sent to renovate their small home in Lucknow, buying new furniture and turning their house into a true home. The family's life, which had once been filled with worry and hardship, was now filled with hope and promise. Relatives who had once ignored Rohan's family, the very people who had never checked in on them during tough times, suddenly began to appear at their doorstep. They came with smiles and offers of help, as if they had always been there. Rohan didn't hold any grudges, but he couldn't help but notice how quickly people's attitudes changed now that his family was doing well. Meanwhile, Rohan's sister completed her studies, and the family began to look forward to the future with excitement. Rohan's success had become a beacon of hope for them, and they all felt a sense of pride in his achievements. As the years went by, Rohan's hard work paid off in ways he could never have imagined. He successfully completed his degree and received a job offer from a prestigious company in Mumbai. The offer was generous, with a starting salary of 4 lakh rupees per month, an amount that once seemed unimaginable during his childhood. Rohan was overjoyed. It was proof of all the sacrifices his family had made and the kindness of Mr. Mehta that had brought him to this point. Before leaving for Mumbai, Rohan went shopping for gifts for his mother and sister. He wanted to show them how much they meant to him. The day he left was emotional. His mother held him tightly, kissed him on the forehead, and her eyes filled with tears of joy. She had seen her son transform from a boy struggling to survive into a successful young man with a bright future. Rohan's first day at his new job as a general manager was overwhelming. As he sat at his desk, taking in the responsibility that came with his position, he couldn't help but think of Mr. Mehta. It was Mr. Mehta who gave him the chance to succeed, who had helped him at his lowest point. Without Mr. Mehta's kindness and unwavering support, Rohan knew none of this would have been possible. Mr. Mehta had not only helped Rohan with food and school fees, but he had also planted a belief in him. The belief that no matter how difficult life becomes, education is the key to overcoming adversity. Rohan owed everything he had to that one act of kindness. As Rohan sat at his desk, thinking about his teacher, he realized he had to find Mr. Mehta and express his gratitude. Without wasting any time, Rohan arranged for the office car and made his way to the school in Lucknow, where Mr. Mehta had once taught him. When he arrived, he learned that Mr. Mehta had left the school a year ago. A sense of urgency filled Rohan. He needed to find Mr. Mehta and thank him properly for everything he had done. After some searching, Rohan managed to get Mr. Mehta's address. He arrived at Mr. Mehta's modest house, carrying fruits and sweets, hoping to express his gratitude. But when Rohan saw Mr. Mehta, he was shocked. The man who was once so full of energy and life now looked weak and frail. The teacher who had helped him in his darkest hour was now in need of help himself. Mr. Mater had been tutoring students at home to make ends meet, but the years of hard work had taken a toll on his health. Rohan was deeply concerned. Without hesitation, he arranged for Mr. Mater to receive proper medical treatment and started sending food and supplies to his house every day. Rohan wanted to ensure that Mr. Mater and his family were well taken care of, just like Mr. Mater had done for him and his family all those years ago. Gradually, Mr. Mater's health improved and he regained his strength. During this time, Rohan's mother, who had already formed a close bond with Mr. Mater's daughter, began visiting their home often. Mr. Mater's daughter, a bright young woman who had recently completed her graduation, impressed Rohan's mother with her kindness and grace. Before long, Rohan's family proposed that Mr. Mater's daughter marry Rohan. Seeing how much love and respect Rohan's family had for his daughter, Mr. Mater happily agreed to the match. The man who had once stepped forward to help Rohan's family in their time of need now found himself being embraced as part of the very same family. He felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude to God for bringing Rohan into his life. The kindness that Mr. Mater had shown years ago had blossomed into a lifelong bond of love, respect, and mutual support. Rohan had become a successful man, not just because of his own hard work, but also because of the selfless support and guidance he had received from Mr. Mater. Rohan realized that Mr. Mater's kindness had been the turning point in his life. The teacher, who had once been a guiding light in his darkest time, was now a cherished part of his family. With a heart full of gratitude, Rohan promised to continue Mr. Mater's legacy of helping others. He knew that one day he too would pass on the kindness that had been shown to him. In this way, the cycle of kindness, love, and support would continue, giving others the same chance to change their lives just as he had. So, friends, this was today's story. Let us know in the comments how you liked the